Today when we hear the readings from Sirach and also what we have in the gospel is kind of an interesting opportunity for us. And it's mostly about choosing. And it's the Gospel of Matthew is actually the second lesson of the Sermon on the Mount. So last week we had the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes. And this week it continues Jesus' teachings. And you notice that I chose the shorter version of the gospel, but within the longer version we hear some very specific things that Jesus is asking his disciples to do. And today in the shorter version we got a sampling of those things, how Jesus' teachings are teachings that are changing the face of the earth. I don't think he's happy. That's okay. He could have stayed. But I know, for example, when we think about the Beatitudes, that's a wonderful, sweet lesson, isn't it? We hear how often we're blessed. We are blessed, being poor in spirit. We're blessed being called children of God, even in that lesson. But the tougher stuff comes in this gospel this week. And it's things that have changed the minds and hearts of people who call themselves believers. And why we say that is because the world would believe in a different way. The world believes that, for example, killing is okay. We see a lot of killing in our world. Well, it's not okay. That's what Jesus is saying. And he's being clear that we need to be about living the commandments that God has brought. And in fact, the longer version of the gospel says that Jesus has come to bring fulfillment to the law. And in fact, the longer version says that Jesus says, I'm not going to remove even one jot or tittle of the law. And a jot and a tittle is those little teeny tiny marks in the Hebrew alphabet, right? He's like, I'm not going to even get rid of those small things. But I've come to fulfill the law. And he wants us to be partners in fulfilling the law. He wants us to be people who will live the commands of the law and people who will be blessed. Now we go back to the reading from Sirach, the first reading today, and it lays it out pretty simple. Choose either life or death, either fire or water. So, it's so plain as that. It can be black and white. You've been put before you the way to live, so choose to live in the commands of the Lord. Now I remember, and Anthony and I were discussing this ahead of Mass, but do you remember Indiana Jones movies? Yeah. And it was one for Search for the Grail or whatever it was. Last Crusade? Okay, so anyway, there's that great scene where they go into this open cavern, and there is the knight there, having been there for 700 years, and they have to choose from all of these holy cups that supposedly is the Holy Grail. And the knight says, choose wisely, right? And remember, it's a great scene. They go in, and the greedy guy picks this really beautiful chalice that I looked at it a little bit closer in the movie, and it's not really that expensive. And he chooses, and all of a sudden he goes through this convulsive moment where he just dies. Remember that scene? And the knight says, he chose poorly. One of the great moments of movie history. In other words, there's a consequence for choosing poorly in the movie. And I believe it's true in our day-to-day lives. When we choose poorly, it has consequences. And mostly, it's the consequence of not living in the life that Jesus Christ wants us. We settle for far, far less than what we should when we choose poorly. We miss the opportunity to be a blessed people. What Jesus wants for us, as we heard last week in that Gospel of the Sermon on the Mount. He wants us to be blessed. He wants us to have our life fulfilled. He wants everything for us when it's all said and done. But we have to be partners with Him in living that life. So I believe each and every day we have choices put before us. Choices that need to be impacted by our Christian faith. Choices that will require us to be even stronger as believers, because the world around us, they don't hold to what we hold to. They'll choose poorly if given the chance. But we want to choose wisely. So think about it this week. What are your choices going to be?